Okay, Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is chapter that deals with socialization, sort of the idea of assimilation. Basically, it's a chapter that deals with how people create a organizational identity. It's really all about looking at this notion of, corporate identity. So in terms of the models of socialization, these are processes through which people, go through and adapt to organizational life. And there are a variety of different ways that this happens. And, they can be viewed simplistically and they can be very complex. They can develop over a large period of time. You can talk about somebody's entire 50 years career within an organization. And they can be a lot of different people involved, a lot of different activities. I like this model on this table. It's very simple. It basically argues that it's very clearly defined stages of socialization, this idea of anticipatory socialization, the encounter, and the metamorphosis. Very clear, very structured in terms of the different stages. In terms of the content of socialization, a couple of things that are brought up here. Two particular theories, one by Lewis and one by Myers and Ochoa. Lewis argued that there are two classes of information that have to be learned, and those two classes are role-related information and information about the organizational culture as a whole. And the role-related information is sort of is just how to do your job. The cultural or the organizational culture has to do with what kind um, of a industry this is, what kind of a institution this is in terms of um, truth, joking. I mean, there's so many different dimensions that this could be. Myers and Olson's is a different approach, and they looked at some of the specific processes that are involved in socialization and talked about how those are negotiated. The actual employment interview has been a large focus of study within these socialization processes, because they're arguing that this is part of that whole first stage, the anticipatory socialization, that first part of the phase, and that it's an important part. That we have the interviewer who's doing things, we have the applicant who's using the interview to do things, and it's a very critical and important element within the socialization process. It's used as a recruitment or a screening tool, um, realizing that the organizational representative has very little time. They really only have that particular interview, and so they have to make decisions beyond what's on a simple resume. And researchers have discovered that interviewers can cue applicants about the appropriate response. For example, if they say something along the lines of, "We are a multinational company and very proud of our multiple offices around the world. We are looking specifically for employees who are willing to travel and be relocated. How do you feel about this?" I mean, there's really only one right answer. So the idea of questions, this link here, I'm going to let you go ahead and you can copy that link if you want to and open it up at a later time. I was going to open up in this lecture, but I'll save time and not do that. So now the interview can also be used as an information gathering tool from the position of the applicant. It's not, it can work both ways, from the side of the interviewer and the side of the interviewee. It can sort of give you this glimpse. It's been shown that applicant satisfaction with how satisfied you are with the interview is a good predictor of second interviews, that there's a perception that the interviewee's role is a passive one, and that they make perceptions about the company based on the behavior of the interviewer or the recruiter. WANIS came up with this RJP, which basically is realistic job preview. And in this case, it's interesting. They argue that it's possible, that within the interview, if you clarify expectations, a matter of aligning expectations with the prospective employee, hey, you know, you're gonna have to work some long hours. Um, you know, our corporate office is in a remote area, there's nothing else nearby, and you set things up that you allow expectations to come more in alignment, and it increases job satisfaction. So interesting research there. This table just indicates some ways that people go about getting information in terms of communication and the strategies that they use. Role development processes in terms of understanding what it is that you need to do. Grahan rather, did some research on this, and then another scholar did research on this whole idea of leader-member exchange theory, and argues that this development of roles begins the minute you enter the organization, and it continues all the time, and it doesn't really end. And there are a variety of processes that exist in developing your role. There's the role taking, where perhaps it's the idea of sampling. There's the role making, which is the negotiation back and forth. The role routinization is when it's well understood, and the relationships in group and out group have to do with, well, obvious relationships. Here is that whole idea of a member-leader exchange role development process drawn out for you in a model. I think that might be helpful. Now, some people have gone beyond looking at the simple notion of leadership and taking sort of a bigger glimpse at it, looking at leadership teams and different models of how people are integrating into the workplace. Interesting research done on technology lately, specifically in the role of social network sites in the interview process, and people Googling your identity and looking at more information, whether it's a blog or something like that. So it's very good to be cognizant of that type of material. Then the chapter closes with this section on the organizational exit. And interesting, in today's society, we don't have the longevity in careers that your grandparents or great-grandparents likely did, where they stayed at the same company their whole life. And the workers nowadays, as particularly in American culture, will enter and exit organizations multiple times throughout their career. And that there's a variety of strategies that they use, some effective, some ineffective. And so how well they orchestrate their organizational exit is one of the aspects that's studied within these particular socialization processes. So that pretty much covers it.